Good morning, Ozzy. So nice to
Good
see you.
morning. Good morning. Good morning, Professor Satchel.
How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you? And it's just, it's been a minute since we actually had this kind of meeting, and I appreciate you for, letting me to be part of this amazing project.
I'm just so excited that you have the time to talk because you have a pretty amazing story to tell, and I'm really happy to include it. So let me begin with an introduction of you, a short bio, and then I'll introduce the project, and then we'll get started on our conversation.
Sure.
All right, great. So I'm going to read this on my other screen.
Okay.
So Azigza Hussen, Ozzy, was born in 1989 in Asmara, Ethiopia, and now lives with his fiance in Montgomery, Alabama. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He speaks Amharic, Swedish, and English. Ozzy lived in Stockholm, Sweden from 2002 to 2017. He was a student at MC at Montgomery College from 2018 to 2020. And I believe you were a student in my class in 2019.
Yes. Yes.
His documentary short film, can you pronounce that for me? Yewub Dar?
Yewub Dar, yes.
Dar, was featured at the International Film Festival in Washington, D.C. in April 2018. I went to that event. It was very exciting. We'll talk more about that. Ozzy had an internship with the Television Academy Foundation and Warner Brothers in Los Angeles in 2019. That was also a very exciting time in your life.
Yes.
Today, he is majoring in communication, radio, television at Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama, one of the oldest historically Black colleges and universities in the United States. So a very special place, Montgomery, Alabama.
Indeed.
Will graduate in very soon, May of 2023. Congratulations, so close. And in his spare time, which I know you have very little of, Ozzy enjoys writing film scripts, watching movies, and working out.
Yes.
So a little background, as you know, my name is Heather Bruce Satchram. I teach in the English Language for Academic Purposes program at Montgomery College, ELAP. This project is called History in the Making, documenting stories of immigrant and refugee students at MC. The goal is to help others better understand the experiences of immigrants and refugees in the United States. Telling your story will enable others to better understand the challenges that immigrants and refugees face and better appreciate the resilience and perseverance of people in your community. So I am so grateful for your participation. You had the chance to read these questions in advance, but please note that all of the questions are optional. If you want to skip a question, just let me know, we can do that. And if any point you'd like to take a break, that's fine. We'll talk for about an hour.
Sure.
Could you please tell me your full name?
So my name is Azigza Hussen. If I have to spell it, the Azigza. The last name is Hussen.
And do I have permission to record this interview?
Yes, yes, you do.
So let's begin by talking about your name. Names have so much information, so many stories.
Indeed.
And now you're living in Montgomery, Alabama. And you mentioned before we started recording that people sometimes have trouble saying your name. So I know that you use the nickname Ozzy. I think you've used some other names as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about nicknames, the name that you choose, and what your name means to you?
Well, I mean, I noticed since I grew up in Sweden, and I noticed my name was a little difficult to pronounce for a lot of people, especially European. And I said I just got to make it easy for a lot of people to just call me, rather than just like forcing everybody. Hey, this is how you pronounce it. So I just decided to use the first three letters, and actually that came through my foster care family. When I used to live with the foster care family back in Sweden, my mother had a very difficult to pronounce my full name, Azigza, and she one day made a belt, like as a gift, a birthday gift. She made a belt with my name on it, and instead of putting Azigza and she just used the first three letters. And since then I said, this may be a cool name. So I used the first, Ozzy, first three letters. And it sounded very easy and easy to remember, easy to pronounce. However, even here now, Montgomery, Alabama, people know me as Ozzy. And I kind of find it more, easy just to be known as instead of like mm, not forcing, but trying to push everyone to position to know my name. I mean, I'm although I do have a history or I do appreciate and understand the reason my name and all of that, kind of just like, I don't make it that much difficult for people to understand where I'm from.
And I think sometimes when you make films, at least in the past, I don't know if you still do, you used another name as well. Am I
Yeah,
remembering that correctly? Can you talk a little bit about that? Is it Leash?
Lij, and that's a title. And the reason is because you probably have heard about the emperor stories. Back in Ethiopia, we had Emperor Haile Selassie, and then we had also Menelik, and we had all those names, and their families, they call themselves, specifically the kids. The emperor is emperor, but the kids, since they um are family of an emperor, they have to have a title. So this title came through, and Lij means lidge, is an identifying to, oh, okay, this is a person related to the emperor, because nobody been called or nobody used that name. But then lately, people started using that title, as we call here Mr. and Mrs. or Sir, you know, and a lot of Ethiopian use that. And I kind of heard, like, back in the days, somebody, my family member said, we have some type of blood history and the Emperor Haile Selassie, but it wasn't identified, or it wasn't like, we don't have this ancestor.com, or I couldn't donate, or not donate, but just send my DNA to find out if I really
So
part
is
of
it
the
is it a way to make a connection to your ancestry and to your homeland?
Yes, but everybody, if kind of like you giving, or you don't want to lose your history, you give yourself a title and say Lij. Lij means just like I'm part of my emperor family, like back in the days, something like that.
I really like that story. Thank you for sharing that.
Uh, I wish it
Um,
made sense though when I told it.
it's a great story. I like that. I like learning about that. So tell me about where you were born and the story of your parents, which is a pretty amazing story.
Well, that's kind of very long story. However, I'm gonna try to make it short and concise and more like, understandable. It is very complicated story too. When I realized that these scripts that I wrote over the years, um, I came to a conclusion that I gotta just make it very um, easy for people to understand. So as a kid or as a child, I was born in a military camp in Asmara. Now it's its own country. Asmara is a part of Eritrea. But back in the days in 89, when I was born, it was part of Ethiopia. So that's why I call myself, or I say I was born in Asmara, but in Ethiopia. But nowadays, if I say so, they will say, but Asmara is in Eritrea. So why are you saying Ethiopia? I mean, for me, it's the same country. Although they did have the civil war. They had all kind of people died, and then the Eritrea got its independency from Ethiopia. I still believe they are part, the same people, and especially because I was born there and I spent my first 2 years in Asmara. And the reason I was there was because my parents met in the military camp during the Civil War, and back then between the the previous regime and the TPLF. I don't know what they call it. I should know it by now. I do know it actually, just trying to explain so that it makes sense. So there was a civil war between, for the power, who should lead the country, and because of that, uh, the Mengistu, which was by the time he was the leader, and or he was the running the country, and he sent all these soldiers to Asmara, including my father and my mother. They were fighting the Meles, or the TPLF. It's called TPL. They call the Ethiopian Liberation or Eritrean Liberation Front, something like that. I should know about that. I'm sorry if I miss these names, but it was a political party who fought for their rights. Or so my parents was there. They met. I got born, but
So your father was a soldier
yes,
in the
yeah,
Ethiopian army,
yes,
and your mother was working at the military camp?
yes. She was working at the military camp as a cook. She was cooking food for the soldiers.
And
She
your
was
parents
part
were
of.
very young too, right?
They were very young. From my understanding, my mom was telling me that story. At that time, she was 14 when she was literally joined the military, and my father was also very young. And
Wow.
uh, they met, and she just, like, happened to like him. And at some point, I believe they lost the war, although they were in, like, fighting. They lost the war, so they had to flee the military camp. So that's when the story got more, very emotional for me. But I kind of, right now, I've told my story so many times, I feel like I want to just show it visually for people, so one day you're probably gonna see. So she had to flee with me, through the desert to Sudan, to Red Cross camp. And during that time, she witnessed so many um, obstacles. People was like dying because of water. People were selling their children because of they had nothing to drink or eat during the, like, process to arriving to Red Cross camp in Sudan. And I was, again, at that time, I was just only maybe less than 2 years, like a toddler, I would say. And I was lucky, or not lucky actually. God protected me during that time. Although my mom couldn't handle to take care of me, a soldier who was very close friend of my father, was nearby, and he took me, and just, like, all the way to Sudan. It took them, I believe that's what I understood, more than 2 weeks just to arrive from Asmara to Sudan.
So
And,
your mother, a teenager, going through the desert with limited water during a war situation, heading towards Sudan. You're about 2 years old, and she hands you to a soldier to try to get you to safety.
yes. So, in God's grace, I reunited with my parents again. However, at that time, my father was wounded. He had to heal, and my mom had to work. So they stayed over 6 months in Sudan, and she worked there while she was, like, trying to help my father and so on. And at some point, an opportunity came, like the people who used to live in a Red Cross camp, they got an opportunity to travel to Australia or America or go back to Ethiopia because the war was over at that time. Like now we're talking about 92 or 93 around that time.
Do you have any memories of that time? Like, do you remember being in Sudan? No.
To be honest, I don't recall anything about that, like because I was a little kid, and the only thing I'm telling this story is based on my father's and my mother's story. Like they
Right.
told me this, and I don't remember anything.
So after that point, you went to Ethiopia, is that right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
what part? Were you in the capital?
First, of course, we arrived in the capital, and that's also when a very unforgettable incidents happened. The reason we went back to Ethiopia because my father wanted to build a family with my mother, like and me. But then as soon as we arrived to Addis Ababa airport, he just left us with everything that got donated to us as a family. We had the privilege to travel first because we were a family, but he used that for his own benefits and just like if he was by himself, he has to wait until families traveled. So he used that. We came to Addis Ababa and he just left with like empty handed. My mother and I didn't know exactly. I mean, this is a story from her perspective. She didn't know exactly what to do. From my father's perspective, he was trying to explain. He was there and fighting for almost 7 years, and he missed his parents, but I don't know if I can take it as an excuse, but he just brought us to Addis Ababa and just left us. But the good thing is she knew exactly where he was from. So she took the bus and went there. But then she made her a decision, like things that she couldn't take it back, which was leaving me with my grandparents, my first, at least, like again, she was a young and I can understand, and she was also Orthodox Christian, and she was married or she had a relationship with the Muslim. And for her thinking about that, and she was again really, really young and she didn't know exactly what to do. So she just made that decision, leave me with my father's parent.
Wow. That must have been an incredibly difficult decision. I mean, especially because I think it's in a way a miracle that you were even reunited with your mother when you were separated in the chaos of the war earlier.
Yes.
How the soldier that took you managed to get you back to your mother is miraculous.
Hmm.
When I think about the chaos of war. So you go to Addis Ababa, your mother decides that the best future for you is with your father's family, your
Yes.
grandparents.
Yes.
So let's pick up the story from there. So you're separated from your mother, you're living with your grandparents?
Yes, got separated with my mom, and literally, or in what sense I can tell, she disappeared from my life. Then I had no memory or anything from my childhood except being told that your mom doesn't exist or your mom died or some those kind of story I was hearing my first 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
Um, And then what happened was around my 10th birthday, my father, at that time, he used to live in Sweden, and he said that he wanted me to go to Sweden with him.
How old were you when you heard from your father who was living in Sweden?
I mean, you're asking me when he left to Sweden from Ethiopia, or when did I hear from
Actually,
him?
both questions. So I'm very interested about how your father ended up living in Sweden. Like that to me is a very interesting story. And I've read about, of course, there's a famous story about a celebrity chef who has
Yeah.
connections to Sweden. He's originally from Ethiopia as well. And I'm thinking about the connections between Ethiopia and Sweden. Was Sweden, did they have a program to help Ethiopians resettle in Stockholm? What happened there?
I think what happened was he got into a relationship. He got married another Swedish woman who had an Ethiopian descendant, like Ethiopian heritage, and he had the luck and went to Sweden. That by the time I was maybe 5, 6, I do have vague memory of him living, but the only thing I remember that I was with my grandparents, and he barely come to see me, and basically he didn't even I didn't even knew that although that I had that fear, I had memory of like fear every time I hear his voice or he's coming around. I kind of like hiding in my grandma's, next grandma, because he just didn't care, and he was scary to me at that time. And those kind of memories I do have, not like father and son memory. Like I traveled there, or we did the two together. A lot of kids would say that, but I didn't. Never remember
Did
those.
you have a good relationship with your grandparents?
I rather would say I have so many good memories. Like every time I even think about my grandma, rest her peace, it's just it, I got compensated by my grandma then because of my father's, like, cruelty or personality. He didn't even care at all. Like I was hoping to have a father who understand or took a responsibility, and so
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 how
for
old were you when you moved to Sweden?
yeah, that's when he moved to Sweden around when I was 5 or 6, and he lived there for a couple of years, and he went back to Ethiopia, and that's when he asked me, or not asked me, but just already started the process and said, "Hey, I'm gonna take you to Sweden." Until then, I noticed, I mean, later on, yeah, I'm gonna just understand when I connect everything. He still was talking to my mom, but every time I hear about it, well, I didn't even ask, but every time he start talking or somebody else talking about my mom, I still don't hear anything. Like, the only thing I hear is that you don't have a mom. Your mom died. Those kind of stories from my father's family.
Wow.
Even until like I went to Sweden, still like he explained he used to talk to her all those years, but I don't hear like a word about like she existed. So I
Were they
went.
afraid that you would go live with her and they would lose you? Why
I
did they
think
not encourage a relationship with your mother? Why did they not reach out? Do you know why? Or is that still kind of a mystery to you?
kinda, I would say it still was so confusing for me to not being able to, like, see my mother when I was a younger. I wish I had, because I don't recall that I had a good memory with my mother
Right.
or father, because both wasn't there when I needed them or when I was a kid. So I
And
don't know. It's still a mystery. Just to answer to your question, I didn't understand. Probably because their religious perspective from I see, because my father again, he comes from a Muslim's background, right? Islam, and my mother is Orthodox Christian. Her parents, or her father at least, he was a priest. So probably the religion difference is one of the reason that they don't want me just like completely forget my parents from my father's side.
so you were raised in a Muslim family. Do you now identify as an Orthodox Christian, or
Yeah.
you do? Okay, that's interesting. That's a whole, probably a whole other story about your
Yes, indeed.
spiritual
It
journey.
is. I mean, Ethiopia, we do have culture. I mean, people live with, and then once in the farm, you can find so many religions too. Not many, but at least those religions that you can find, specifically the Orthodox Christians and Muslims, and now we do have Protestants and so on. So it is accepted to have Muslims name, mostly if we are talking about names as well. Like some people have a very common Islamic name, but they are a Christian. And some people are sounds very Christian, but are Muslim. So when it comes to religion, so
Well, when
uh,
people see your name in the United States, your last name,
yeah,
I'm guessing that they assume that you're Muslim.
yeah.
That
So
happen?
there, a lot of people assume that, but I just have to say a word or two, and then that was it. So
People
yeah.
always have assumptions, right? Okay, so you grow up in this with your grandmother, your grandparents,
Yes.
in Addis, and you're
Bahar Dar is more of like northern Ethiopia. It
okay
wasn't
in
in
northern
the capital
Ethiopia.
city, yeah.
Did you grow up in a is that a city? Is that a small town? What was that
Yeah,
like?
kind of, I would say a small city compared to the capital city. I would say the place that I was around was a small city.
Okay.
We still could go everywhere we wanted, but it wasn't big as the capital city though.
So how old were you when you moved to Stockholm?
So I was almost 11. I think I celebrated my 11th birthday, and then I was 12 at that time.
So I would love for you to describe your reactions to Stockholm. Different language, different climate, different culture. I mean, completely different experience. Tell me about how you felt when you first got to Stockholm. And you didn't really know your father either. So
Yeah.
like a huge upheaval in your
I mean, I still remember the day, the time, how exactly it felt as soon as I arrived at the airport and when I got out. It was during winter time. It was March 9th, and it was, I think it was Saturday, I believe. And it was a very snowy day. For me, it was like completely like opposite to where I grew up. Like the sunny, dry, humid weather, like the sun. You hate you really get frustrated because it's really hot. And compared to the place that I'm coming in, which is Stockholm, which was in Stockholm, I was like, what is this? Everything was exciting, like the snow, white snow on the road. Like, I remember driving, I was sitting next, like, windows side. I was just looking at it very excited. It was like, what is it? What is it? I kind of felt like I wanted to
snow
go
for the
out.
first time. It's probably a magical experience. Like,
Yeah. So my first 3, 4 days, I was inside. I never went out from the house or the apartment we lived in. But then fifth, sixth day, somebody, I think my family member from my father's parent side, they wanted to take me out, like just to walk around the neighborhood. And that's when I touched the snow for the first time, like my hand, the snow. And I was like they were doing a snowball, the other kids around, and I was like, wow, okay. I was just like, it was cold, but because I was excited, I didn't even felt anything. And I started making my first snowball. And was good memory actually. Then right quick, actually, I felt so sad because my father is working, people that he knows is working. So like they, for the first month, I believe I was home alone. Everybody goes to work. And the only thing I enjoy myself was just going to the balcony and just looking at people playing and like, until I guess I started school. So yeah, so Sweden or Stockholm compared to the little small city I grew up, was obviously it's a huge differences, but I was destined to live there, so I had to learn the language, the culture, and I also remember when I, for the first time, said a full sentence in Swedish. And that was something I was speaking with the old lady in a train station. I even tried, I thought I said something nice, but unfortunately I think I said something more provoking or offending her. And I said, okay, I gotta figure this out. So those kind of memory I do have, but then again, right quick, I couldn't even live with my father. I got replaced because his personality wasn't changed, even if he is living in a well-developed country where kids was respected or female was respected. He could just, like, every time he got angry, he just doing, like, doing something, hitting me, or you know
Must
the
have been
details.
so disorienting for you. I can only imagine, like, your life completely upended.
Yeah,
Yeah. Could you, I don't want to interrupt the flow of your story, but adjust your camera just a little bit so I can make sure I can see all of you.
sure.
So I'm imagining that as a child, you were hopeful to develop a positive relationship with your father, and that did not happen.
No,
So
I mean, I wish I had. I mean, I wish we built that relationship that I know now. I could call my father or just at least let him know where I am. Unfortunately, I was thinking the other day, I was just like seeing families arrive around this city, taking picture, siblings, a graduation picture, and then sending invitation card and all of that. And I was like, who am I gonna send it to? I mean, nobody's gonna come, or especially, the most important people in your life don't even care. And I was like, well, this is my life. It's kind of like, I'm just celebrating it with people that I know when I was, growing up here. Right. So he literally, I didn't choose to be born in his family, so, but I wish that I had that life where I could just like, Dad, what's going on this weekend? Let's go out. Those kind of, things I wish, but
were
not
you
a single day got a phone call when I was here. I've been here now almost 6 years. I didn't hear anything from him, and I'm not expecting anything from him either. So the list I was
very
hoping was
painful. I'm so sorry. Did you then end up living with a foster family, a Swedish family?
yes, yes, that's what happened. So because of an incident that he was like very angry and using force to try to make me understand what he was trying. I think at that time I remember the police was nearby, and of course I heard about it, that kids never, we don't hit the kids, or we don't, like, force them to do anything. And I heard that at school, and I just happened to call the number, and they stopped by and they saw some huge like a bruise on my forehead here, and they couldn't just accept it. They said, "Oh, we're just gonna take him for a day or two and figure out what exactly is happening." And when they asked me, I told the entire story, what exactly happening at home, and so. and they just decided for me to like keep me away from my father.
What was
And
your foster family like? Were they kind to you?
yes, actually, I still have a connection with them, and that's something I also very grateful. I finished my high school there, and I started studying in college because I had a good foster care family. Um, and she was great. Like, I learned a lot about the Swedish culture, even be good as a person, as an individual. So during that time, that's when the completely new unexpected story happened. Like my mom, like, my father was just trying to, like, let's say, trying to ask my forgiveness to live with him again. And the way he did it was trying to use our kind of techniques. Like he said he has been changed or he's not going to do that again and all of that. I didn't listen to that. But at some point he said, "Hey, did you know that your mom was living or is still living and you want to meet her?" I was like, "What?" Where did it come from? Like, and that's when I started to know that my mother was still alive, and she still kept like trying to reach through like to me, but he didn't even give her a chance to talk to me.
You discovered when you were in high school that your mother was still alive?
Mhm.
Wow.
So
Let's come back to that part of the story in a little bit. I'm curious about one of the memories that I have. I have a couple of memories about you. One was seeing a photograph of you, a school picture of you in Sweden, and it was
mhm,
mostly very white, blonde, blue-eyed kids and you. What
yes.
was it like to be in the ethnic minority in Sweden? Was that challenging for you? Did kids treat you, did they accept you, or did you always feel different?
Well, I would say yes. As- in high school, it was actually okay. I was more, I would say, in elementary school or although yes, as you saw the picture, you saw that the majority was like, European or Scandinavian or Swedish students. I do recall like I had a little challenges, yes, and because I had a dialect or the way I pronounce things is because different from them, and but I mean at the end of the day, I felt like it was a safe. It's just more of like when I started working, when I started um when I started working, that's when I see the real challenge, being accepted. But in my high school experience, it was okay. I wouldn't say that I had uh, that much challenges or difficulties.
And I remember when you were at MC, a couple of things. One is that there was an international event, a cultural event, and you actually represented Sweden at that event. So
Yes,
what I
yes.
remember is that I think you do, in some ways, identify with Swedish culture or appreciate aspects of Swedish culture. Is that fair to say?
I would say that definitely because I was in Sweden, that's here today. I don't know. All these opportunities didn't come to me if I didn't grow up in Sweden and learn the language and culture and also be good at in college and find my passion. So all of that happened because I was in Sweden. All these people that have helped me over the years, I met them in Sweden. And I understand, I believe, I would say I completely understand the culture, how Swedish people or the system works and all of that. So for me, representing Sweden at the cultural event day at MC was something that, hey, there are a lot of Ethiopians here. I can't talk about Ethiopia that much because my memory or my kind of knowledge about Ethiopia was at that time was very vague, very like little compared to what I know about Sweden. Knowing the language, what kind of cookies we eat during the tea time, or the food, and even the national anthem. Somebody was asking me about the national anthem and the national food of Sweden, and all of that. And that for me that was just a basic. And I said, why not? Just representing Sweden,
I,
And
I thought
especially because I came directly from Sweden. I didn't just move directly from Ethiopia or so. Just I came directly from Sweden to MC. So that would be perfect.
And that reminds me of another memory that I have of you. On the very first day when you were in my class, you took a diagnostic test. So I had a
Yeah.
writing sample from you. And I remember I had met you, I had seen your name, and I read your writing sample. And I'm used to seeing writing from Ethiopian students, and I'm familiar with the language challenges and differences, right? And when I read your writing sample, I said, this is completely different from any other Ethiopian student writing sample I've seen. And I was like, it looks like I was thinking maybe you had like German background. I'm looking at these
Yeah.
different linguistically, and I'm thinking, okay, there is a story that I need to find out. And so I remember talking with you, and you said, oh, you explained your background. I was thinking just about the linguistic challenges of going from growing up speaking Amharic, being 11 or 12 years old, having to learn Swedish so that you could succeed academically there, then coming to the United States, having to learn academic English. Like linguistically, it's very challenging what you did, because you're pursuing higher education. So this is not just conversational English. You had to learn academic English, but you had already learned academic Swedish. So the challenges
Yes.
were immense. And yet you've managed to do it. So I just find that incredibly interesting, your story. I do want to talk to you about, I remember you mentioned that there was a teacher, if I remember this correctly, in your high school who introduced you to photography and film. Is that right?
High school is more of like nonprofit organization that introduced me to do kind of like a media related projects. And the first thing I did was actually holding a mic. And that's when I felt that, I had the power. I could, the comfort zone, or, before even holding the mic, I didn't even know that I could go and talk to anyone in Swedish language. Like I did, I mean, in class, or I talked to my friends and all of that, but then completely changed when I heard my voice and just holding up mic and asking people just like that. I just like realized the power of like, be the interviewer or asking people, and I was like, okay, I
This is
kind of like
the
it.
power of storytelling too, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
you have an amazing story, but you also got to learn other people's stories.
exactly.
So tell me about the nonprofit organization that introduced you to this very important part of your life that now has become the focus of your career.
Yes, I mean, it's called a fanzingo. Actually, I believe there are a couple of places here in America that I have kind of similar mission. And for me, that place was very crucial, because I keep mentioning them because they molded me to understand how story are powerful, to connect people, to change society, to help other people to be inspired, and I spent so many hours and time at that place. Because I just don't want to be part of, during the high school or elementary school. I don't want to be involved in any criminal activity, or just going out and do nothing, or, as you understand, we do have it here too. As a kid, you're always excited to do something that you later on maybe probably regret. And I try to avoid that by just hiding me in that media lab, where I could just like, experiment. Even if it wasn't good, I could just like take the camera and just record myself, or just recording somebody else, just to look, just to understand how the equipment works, and to understand how people telling a story. So I call that place as my second home. Like as soon as I finish high school, or as soon as I finish my class in high school, I straight go to that place and met these mentors, and they were talking, hey Ozzy, you can do that, you can do this, you can do that. And all these ideas came to fruition. Like I ended up deciding, hey, I want to take my camera, or I want to like, land a camera and travel to Ethiopia to meet my mom. And they were excited for me. I said, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So
Wow.
they helped me to, for the first time, to travel back to Ethiopia to meet my mother. And I came back with so many hours,
How
material.
old were you when you met your mother?
I was 17.
And you made a film about that experience.
Yes.
What's the name of that film?
It's called Back to Mama. It's an actually on YouTube.
I'll
And
include a link to it later so
yeah,
that people are watching this, if they want to watch that, that was your first film that you made.
my first ever film, and that's when I just like decided, hey, this is gonna be my route. Like I understood, as we said earlier, I started as holding a mic and asking people, but then when I told my story and my mom's story in a visual form, but totally I was like blown. I was mind blown. I just understood, hey, I can actually be something. I can actually tell a powerful story like this to connect with people or to change something. And
And
I
now you have a connection with your mother. You are in communication with her and with siblings too.
I do have a sibling from my mother's side, yes. I do have from my father's side too, but my connection or my relationship has very little compared to I talk to my mom or my little brother from my mom's side. So that's how it is. But again, if I talked about my first film, that's when I just decided that I want to become a filmmaker.
You shared with me one time a really powerful memory about a time when you were in Sweden and you had this vision of yourself
Mhm.
in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
Can you tell that story?
So the place that I said that I spend a lot of hours after school and weekends, the called Fanzingo, and they were just, we on weekends you could attend workshops, you could participate, and Samuel, he was the basically the president of that nonprofit organization at that time, and he was the one who's holding this workshop. And the workshop was about to just like close our eyes and have this mental like trip to somewhere in 10 years forward. Like he asked us to close our eyes and think about a place where we see ourselves in 10 years from that day. Like at that time I was maybe 15, 16, I would say. And we were more than maybe 15, 16 people. Most of them were much, much older than me. But however, when we just like all of us, took us maybe 5, 6 minutes workshops, exercise. And when we came back from that mental trip, everybody was sharing a story where they see themselves in 10 years, the place, the weather and exact location, who they are meeting and what they are doing exactly at the moment and all of that. And I start telling a story. I saw myself in a skyscraper in Hollywood, in the middle of like an office, was signing a contract for my first feature film that was, accepted by a Hollywood producer. And people were just laughing at the time. They're like, why are you imagining that? Like, the people who was at the workshop. Maybe they laughed because they just like believe that they is not a reachable or so. But then the workshop leader, he was like, hey, I mean, this is a workshop that we just doing it to make it work. This probably is possible. Those kind of words actually helped me to fight for it. So
And later you ended up going to Los Angeles with your internship.
yes, moving forward, even if it wasn't a movie, a script contract signing, but at least I found myself in a skyscraper in the middle of Hollywood in Burbank, in the Television Academy Foundation headquarter. I was signing it, and then it was just like a deja vu for me.
Yeah.
At that moment, somebody was taking a picture of me while I was signing my internship contract. I was like, wait, where did I saw this picture? Or where did I saw this moment? And I connected it to that workshop. And I sent a picture to Samuel, and the first thing he said, I wish they didn't laugh at you at that time. But I mean, again, it wasn't exactly the it wasn't exactly what it was happening is not the first film contract, but at least it showed me it's possible as long as we were fighting for that dream. Like,
I remember seeing that photograph of you signing that contract in Los Angeles. Maybe you can share that photo with me and then I can post it so other people can see it. I want to not go fast forward too much. I'm going to go back a little bit. So
sure.
I would like to know about the time when you decided to leave Sweden and come to the Maryland, DC area. What drew you to this part of the world? And how did you discover Montgomery College?
Well, that's a good question. So, as you understood in our conversation, I was away from the my heritage or my history, my culture because of my foster care family, and I was just trying to learn more about the Swedish culture. So I was literally very far away from my culture. So I grew up in that family, Swedish family. Then when I decided to move to the US is because again it's connected to that workshop, it's connected to my childhood dream to be in the US and finishing a degree and all of that. And then it's connected to just like being a filmmaker was difficult to in Sweden than in America. So I said just have to move to a place where I can actually see myself. And that decision came actually during my um uh, play a time where I had a very difficult time or challenges in workplaces, the invisible racism. I could feel it. I couldn't talk about it, but I could just feel it that I wasn't accepted in that work environment. People were just seeing me as a different, and I don't know why. It was just a lot of challenge, and I said, you know what? I'd rather just continue fight for my dream. Although I found myself in a better position than most of my peers, like high school students. I was working for national TV and I was traveling in so many places. I was doing freelance work and all of that. That was exciting moment. But still I had to fight to be accepted. And I said, no, I'm not gonna just put all this effort to be accepted here. I can just go anywhere I want. And that's when the US trip or moving to the US came in, and I said, you know what, I will work a year, and then after this, I'm gonna just go to the US. And during that time, I looked up so many places. So West Coast was my first priority, but then I realized the tuition for college was higher. I couldn't find a scholarship. And I also looked at other film school. Most of them was not like, accepting a foreigner student. In the again, it's all related to the tuition. Although I was very interested to pursue film degree. So, and then I also asked myself, how much do I know about my culture? And so if I move to Maryland, what would I do? Where would I be? So I just happened to talk to an Ethiopian guy through social media. And he said in Maryland, there's a place called Silver Spring and many Ethiopians. And I said, really? Okay. So and then I Googled it and all these Google, map and Google Earth, and I studied so many places before I even came to the US. And I just decided, I said, you know what, maybe that would be a great place to reconnect to my culture, but also actually study in community college.
We have such a large Ethiopian American community here in Silver Spring and in DC and the surrounding area. Was it challenging to connect with Ethiopian Americans here, or did you find that they were welcoming and easy to get to know?
Actually, I mean, if I can just start telling how my first week and second, and then move on,
Yeah.
how it was like. I didn't thought I was in the US. I didn't thought that I was actually living in the US the first 3 weeks because everywhere I go, I saw people from where I come from in Sweden. Compared to that, like I barely see an Ethiopian. And I asked myself, did I move to Ethiopia or did I live like especially the Silver Spring area was so for me it was like I didn't exactly know exactly how to feel, like excited or worried because what am I gonna do now? But I was lucky. I was just going to the store when I talked to someone. I didn't know the language, so when I talked to, they just like Ethiopian. They speak Amharic. When I go to the cafeteria or in a coffee shop, I hear somebody talking in Amharic. And I go to like 7-Eleven or CVS, I see someone. I was like, wow, okay, this must be something maybe I never thought I would have. I thought maybe just like, couple or people that are here and there, yeah, probably me. But Silver Spring area was full of Ethiopians. Like I could meet everywhere I go. There
Did
was
you
someone.
remember how to speak Amharic? Because a lot of time had passed. Did you have,
Yes,
were you rusty?
I mean the good thing was because during the high school time, I was given a the like mother language professor. Like you could have a choose either they give you an option, either learning another language or learning your own language in high school. So I said I want to learn in my Amharic language in high school. So this professor came twice in a week. He kept me actually going. That's the only person I met in Sweden when we so he make me read, although I'm not a fast reader. At least he kept me talking to him. He kept me give me assignments, so at least I understand the basics of Amharic. So I and then once in a while there were some festivals that I attended, and that's something I think I would say helped me to um keep my mother language.
Did you feel like you were home in a way when you saw like faces that felt familiar to you, or you heard Amharic? Did you have a sense of feeling at home when you were in Silver Spring?
I would say yes, but at the same time, also kind of a little overwhelmed, or I didn't know exactly how to accept it or how to utilize it. I mean, well, the first picture I took was in between Silver Spring and DC. There is mirror or a wall, it says welcome to DC. But when I see here Silver Spring, I see in DC. So I took that, and I was literally, I think, across the Montgomery College art building, or just a little far from that. But so in both direction, I could just walk and I could meet Ethiopians. And I said, okay, this must be very exciting. So yeah, I don't know if that is something could give you, a full picture, but for me it was I was excited at that time, just then attending a Montgomery College also helped me to understand it better, understand how large the Ethiopian community was or still is, right?
So tell me a little bit about your experience at Montgomery College. You were placed into an English language program. It's now called English Language for Academic Purposes. When you were there, I think it was called the AELP, American English Language Program.
Yeah.
But you had to take a test. You were told, look, you need to improve your English. How did you feel about that?
I mean, I thought I was good enough to take college classes and so on, but I noticed that, I mean, even if I come from Sweden and studied English, fortunately I still had needed some improvement. But I accepted the challenge because I was focused. I said, you know what, I came here for a reason, and for one thing, which is getting a degree in this country. So whatever it takes, I will take the challenge. So I decided to take those classes, and for me it was just like, experience, a good experience, not only the language part, but also I had a good relationship with my professors. I think it's because of that we still sitting now and talking, and you and other professors that I've had didn't just only come to class because just want to teach a language or want to teach English. He came to understand what we needed, and trying to support us. And I noticed that, and I was so, like, always grateful. I could even witness at some point, I mean, one of the um, milestones in my life is to be at Warner Brothers, right? Just to accomplish that internship, or to be at that internship, the preparation was huge, and you were part of it. It helped me. You weren't just only a professor, but you also trying to, hey, understand our dream, understand our vision, where we come from, and then trying to support us. And Professor Gold, who tried to get me into in prestigious university in UCLA, the USC, and all of that, all these paperwork, and try to understand. And for me, it was like, I never had those kind of experience in the other schools except, like, Montgomery College. So my experience getting all kind of opportunity, do the presentation for humanitarian days, and you know so how I saw that, or how I experienced that, I wasn't there learning language, or I wasn't there to try to improve myself. It was more of like, I was getting an experience through you, understanding the American style or American life, and supporting my vision and dream.
I
So
remember you sitting in Professor James Murray's office. Do you
yes.
remember? Do you want to share that memory about preparing your application for the internship in Los Angeles?
That was like 2 days before the deadline. I remember that you were notified that you have to write the letter of recommendation. Professor Murray has to write that, and I was like, how is it going to be possible that being accepted? But I mean, it's all go backs to you two as well, of course, as much as I put the effort, but it's also because of you share the link. Hey, Ozzy, this, I still remember, I wish I had still had my MC email. Like all the emails that I get from you, I kind of like sometimes get even overwhelmed because you were thinking so much about your students. And of course, not only you, but other professors as well. like MC for me was not only just there to learn in a specific language or so, it's more of like understanding and getting help that I need for my future.
I
And
remember just how much Professor Murray, Professor Gold, and I wanted you to succeed because we saw
mhm,
so much potential. We saw your skill, we saw your drive, and it was so important to us how hard you worked in putting together your application. I mean, I remember that very vividly.
yes.
In fact, and could you share before we started recording, you showed something on camera. Can you
Oh
share?
yeah, of course. I
Made me
mean,
laugh.
I just happened to be next to my books and I said, you know what, this is something that I looked at time to time. I don't know if it's visible. Is
Yeah,
it?
it's the grammar for writing 1 and 2 textbooks that
Yeah. So I mean, it's good.
it just makes me so happy that you're still referring to those texts and that you are still very interested in perfecting your English. I think that
I
that means
am.
a lot to me.
I am. I think in a language there is a lot in it. Like when somebody understand a language, I think you understand the culture, understand everything else, I believe. And I want to express myself so well enough so people um, can understand the way I am trying to or the story I wanted to tell.
And I
And
also remember that you, at that time, of course, you're trying to do well in your classes. You have so much going on, but you also submitted a film to the International Film Festival in DC. And I went to that event with Professor David Lott, Professor James Murray, I believe was there, Professor
yeah,
Serena Gould was there. I think Professor Miriam Zeman was also there, but a whole bunch of faculty
yes.
came to support you. And that was a really magical moment. Can you talk just briefly about that film, the short film that was selected for that film festival?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it's everything goes back again. My experience at MC. So my experience at MC was not only just to specific learn a specific subject or just be good at my language or so. Again, is more of like supporting everything that I do to get successful. So one of the things that I did during my experience, my time at MC was trying to make a documentary or a short narrative back in Ethiopia, come back to the US and finish it and submitting a festival. So I did that with the help, with the, traveled back to Ethiopia, shot it, then came back and edited it, and then tried to even get the subtitle support. And I remember you looked at it. I remember the Professor David Lott looked at it, and Professor Mori, and the process submitting it to festival is also one thing. Once I submitted it, I got accepted, and I had to share that moment with you. And you came all the way to the festival and supported me. And it was a story. I mean, if we're talking about specific, the story, I wanted it to share a story about what's happening around the place that I grew up. It was about the water hyacinth, invading or the Blue Nile. We were talking about the fishes was dying, and I made it more romantic though, and keep the story embedded in that romantic story between a young fisherman and a young lady who lived in a small village. So if I have to talk about the support and everything that you did to support me, and again, I mean, I'm always grateful for you came to the festival, supported me, but also screening it to students at MC. If you remember, I had also
Oh, during humanities days?
yes, I screened that
Yeah, students got to see your work
students
because,
and
and I
students
remember like,
wrote the
yeah,
essay about it too. I remember a couple of your students came to me while I was working at the writing center. They wanted to write an essay about that short, and I was like, okay, exciting. Okay, can imagine how much it was helping. But then I noticed that it was actually helping, and people was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Like they found themselves seen, like because I was creating a movie about their culture too, not only mine, but some Ethiopian students came and say, thank you, Ozzy, for doing this. And I gotta say thank you to Professor Sotrom and other professors who
I,
give students the opportunity.
what you just said about being seen, I think is so important. And I do remember students' reactions to watching that film about the environmental problems that were being faced by this community in Ethiopia, and the love story that developed. And it was really magical to watch students watching your work and the connection that was made there. That was a really magical moment.
Yeah,
Um,
uh,
and then after that, so you were working in the writing center at that time too?
yeah, I think I was doing that. I was doing so many things outside of class and was working 20 hours at a writing center. There was so many things happening. So
So
yeah.
many things were happening. And then I also remember, can you remind me, there was a counselor or advisor who told you um, about Alabama State University, right? Who was that?
So Mr. B is Mr. Barber Rolf. He's I don't know his title, but he's working at the I think I forgot it.
Counselor?
It's not exactly a counselor, but he's helping students to acquainted in MC. He was just meeting students all over, like talking about different colleges after community college, trying to help students to achieve their dreams by talking to us.
What
And
was his name again? Can you remind me?
Mr. Barbara Rolf,
That's right.
Mr. B, we call him Mr. B. I had in my mind, but I don't know. I tried to exactly see where he works at. He forgot the department, but
That's
it,
okay. We can look it up later. But that led you to learning about HBCUs.
yes, for
That
the
brought you
first
to
time.
Montgomery, Alabama, where there is a very important history related to the civil rights movement in the United States. Tell me a little bit about what you've learned living in Montgomery, Alabama, and being at an HBCU. How has that affected you?
Actually, for the better, to make me more aware or understand the Black African American history, and make me a better person. To make so I would say here living in Montgomery, in Alabama, I never heard about that place or this place now before I even came. Like the only thing I had in my mind living on the West Coast or stay in Maryland working there. So, but at some point, while I was looking at universities to finish my degree, I came across this person, Mr. B. He introduced me to this university, Alabama State University. He told me a brief story or brief background um, about the area, that this is the epidemic of civil rights movement, where like Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King and Abernathy or all these names that I mentioned fought for their rights and fought for African American history. In the bus boycott, the what do you call it? The the Selma blood. What do you think I had in my mind? I recently was there too. The
And
walk from Selma to Montgomery.
I think Brian Stevenson, who's a civil rights attorney, his organization Equal Justice Initiative is based
Yeah.
in Montgomery, if I remember correctly. And have you been to the Legacy Museum and to There's a monument to peace and justice there too, I understand, a memorial. Have you been
Yeah,
to these places?
several times. And I think all these stories that I was just trying to tell came from the visiting these places, not only visiting Legacy Museum or Peace and Justice Memorial, but also around the city, you could see very historical places, like where the slavery was, like a slavery trade, uh, and where Rosa Parks boycotted the bus for the first time, like refused to go off or at least leave her seat, and the Baptist Church of Martin Luther King, and to mention a few. So the museum by itself gives you the entire picture of, like, the Black African American history, but also you are in the middle of that place, like center of like Black history, and you understand from the southern Black people talking, and sometimes you feel so proud that you actually in the middle of that story that you've been hearing about on TV, or you've been here, maybe you're reading about it, and then you find yourself in the middle of it. So for me, of course, it helped me to gain and understand better about the Black history, and and hopefully, of course, a someday or some point, I'm probably gonna express that in a form of a visual, how I understand, because at the end of the day, everybody has to have a kind of an inspiration source, right? So
I
my
will do that. I think there are so many stories that need to be told about this, and
Mhm.
I think it's wonderful that you're in a place with so much rich history where you were able to learn about that very important part of U.S. history. Um,
Yes,
so you're going to graduate soon. You're going to
yes,
get married soon.
yes.
You have big events happening in your life. Um, and I'm thinking now about how when I first met you, this journey seemed perhaps so daunting, so difficult. What have you done, or what do you continue to do when things are hard, when you're tired, when you think, oh my gosh, how am I going to achieve this? What has helped you? What has sustained you?
Think at this point, I mean, again, I'm literally 3 days away to finalize and finish all my assignments, and just that's it. So I never thought I would come all the way to this point, to be honest, because at some point, especially during the pandemic, I was literally giving up, and just like, I didn't even know that this day would come. But what kept me going is just, all these motivations, encouragements, from people that I know, and including you, and including Professor Gold, including people that I met here in Montgomery, people I met over the years, and everywhere. They, their stories, their encouragement that this day will come and that you will graduate, that you have a better life. So think, I would say that the good people around me, the people who really believed in me, are the reasons that I'm here today. Like, if it was for me, I probably just went back to Sweden and just gave up and say, I don't see myself finishing up a college, or I don't see myself building a life here, especially again, everything related to the pandemic. So right after I was finishing up my associate, my MC, the pandemic broke, like March 20, right? 2020. That's when everything started falling apart. Um, we were locked down. We didn't exactly know where we were heading, and people were like, feeling the anxiety, the depression, all of that. So, but thank God, we helped each other to go through this, and you were there for me too. Like, we had all these Zoom calls, sometimes even emails, and then suggesting all kind of activities, like, going out for a walk. And I remember I found a place that could help me to meditate and reflect and all of that. That's literally in a White Oak. And so, just to give you a short answer, the reason that I would say that kept me going is because the relationship that I built with people like you, and people like Professor Gold, and your encouragements.
Did you also participate in the digital storytelling internship program?
I did. I think that was either before the pandemic or after the pandemic. I don't
That was
remember.
with Professor Matthew Decker,
Yeah,
Professor Jamie Gillen.
yeah.
Um, did you, was that experience helpful for you too, in terms of like meeting other students, or being able to tell your stories through digital storytelling and helping others?
Indeed, actually, the digital storytelling project was also another form or another way to come out from my comfort zone and telling a story, using visual again to reconnect with people, and of course to be introduced to other people around MC. So my experience at MC, um, just through this digital storytelling project, it opened up so many doors and places and people that I wouldn't meet. I think for the fact that this is a bigger college, a bigger um, college, yes, compared to the one that I am in today, and three campuses, I believe, and all these people I wouldn't meet if it wasn't for digital storytelling project. Then I happen to have a powerful story about the decision to that I made. That was a very short story about a moment. It's connected to the Back to Mama short documentary I made, but this time I was just telling it in a form of like, what would happen if I decided to stay with my mom, because she offered me to stay with her when I met her for the first time. She asked me to stay around her and help her and do a business, and I was just like speculating, what would I have been if I decided to actually stay in Ethiopia and lived with her. And I noticed, like, yes, of course, all these opportunities wouldn't come. My dream, I wouldn't fulfill my dream, which is I'm about to hopefully very soon. And a great life. Although I'm far, far away from home, at least I'm living a decent life. So I'm grateful for.
I think, if I remember correctly, that was a digital story about a fork in the road where you had to make a choice. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I'd love to. Maybe you can send me the link to that, and I can also link that to this so that people can watch that story as well. It's a powerful one.
sure.
So you are about to achieve a goal. It's taken a long time to get there, but you are doing it.
Yeah.
You're graduating. And what are your plans going forward? What are your hopes? What do you plan to do for work? Where do you want to live? Tell me a little bit about where you see your future going.
So my plan is still the same as it was when I came to the US. Like, I still live very close enough to the film industry. However, I mean, circumstances or things changes over the time. Like, now I'm not only alone, I have a fiance who lives with me. So every time I make a decision, I got to make sure that I decided not for only my plan, but also include her in my plan. But still, after graduation, my plan is just at least work for a year or two here in this country to get settled, to find a place what I can call home. Well, I mean, it is home, but I want to just like, settled at some point in a state or in a place where I can just like, where hopefully kids grow up, like, kids that maybe if God gives us. And so, um,
So many students I've interviewed for this project have talked about this idea of home. And when
mhm,
you come from a different place and you've lived in different places, like you have, because of very challenging circumstances, sometimes it's hard to know where you are home. Do you
yeah,
think that it's possible that the Silver Spring area might become your home, or do you envision yourself maybe living in California, closer to like the heart of the film industry? Where do you see home being in the future?
to be honest, at this point, I don't know exactly.
Hard to say. Yeah.
Hard to say at this point. I think I will always be on a run or just like, relocate myself until I get settled or feel like I have something to contribute to the community, or at least I have a space, I have a place where I can be accepted and I can make a living out of what I am passionate about. So if I find that place, I'm still looking for it. I mean, I'm doing it right now, but I gotta make sure that this is not only my choice or my decision, because I'm not living again with myself, just by myself, but also living with somebody who also had a dream or still have a dream, want to be somewhere and so on. So I gotta try to compromise at some point, I believe.
You've talked a lot today about family and finding family, and it looks like maybe now you're moving in the direction of creating your own family.
I think that's a very key point because I don't want anything to happen to a family that I want to build. Like I don't want anyone to experience this kind of life that I've had. But the list that I'm going to do is just to make sure that I create a safe space, safe place, and like a responsibility filled with the responsibility family. Like I'm still like, I was very young when I decided I would never have a kid or never have a person in my life or to my responsibility unless I feel like I'm ready enough. So I said, when I think that day will come soon. So when that day comes, I make sure that I'll be much better parent than my parent was.
It's been so wonderful to watch you as you've grown in this way, and that how you've moved step by step to reach your goals. And I have no doubt that you will continue to do that. I believe that absolutely. How do you feel today about this conversation, about telling your story? What emotions are you feeling?
Well, I gotta say, actually, thank you for just, it's been a while since I speak with someone so deep and at least sharing and going back and forth to reflect and I just did it because first I kind of feel like uh, things that I could do for this project is completely small compared to what you helped me to achieve over the years, like my experience at MC and so. But when it comes to how I feel, it feels good that I actually talking about it. Yesterday I had a very bad day, for example, but just today I woke up and I was just hoping to have a good day, but then talking about it and realized that, hey, I'm actually on the right path, like, And thank you for a great conversation. You didn't make it look like an interview, it's more of like conversation. And thank you for that. Like it felt
I
so good.
I have really enjoyed this conversation today, and I have no doubt that students who watch this will really be inspired by your story. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I know you're very, very busy. Is there anything else that you want to add before I stop recording?
I don't know. I think we covered most
We
of
covered a lot. We covered a lot.
so many things we covered. So, but I mean, whatever is worth, I believe, like we just gotta understand. The only thing I can say to students, future students, anybody, or if there's a possibility for them to see this, like stick to our dream and then try to understand other people have dream too. And I think, I don't know, just trying to be wise, but it's hard to be at this point. It's just like, listen to your heart, maybe something like that. I would finish it up with.
Yeah, I think listen to your heart. I think stick to your path.
Yes,
You did not give up. And there were many, many times when I know things got very challenging for you,
yes,
but you are creating the life that you envisioned.
yeah.
So
With God's grace, yes. I'm almost, yes.
congratulations, Ozzy. It's been so great talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you for this opportunity, and I hope that we when I come to the Maryland, I'm probably gonna visit MC just to reconnect with everyone, hopefully.
We would love that. We would love that. All right, I'm
Okay.
going to stop recording now. Thank you.
Okay.